Right now, like, half the world is bracing for rolling blackouts as these extreme heat waves literally melt the power grid.
Yeah, it's a brutal summer.
It really is.
Yeah.
But at this exact same moment, billions of dollars are being poured into building these massive artificial intelligence data centers.
Right.
And they consume as much electricity as, small European nations.
Easily. The scale is just massive.
Right. So it begs the question, are we building the brilliant brain of the future, or are we just going to completely short-circuit the present?
That is the big question right now.
Welcome to this deep dive into a stack of news briefings from the Daily Tech Reader. We are specifically looking at the global landscape as of Tuesday, June 30, 2026.
I'm glad to be here.
If you are joining us today, our mission is straightforward. We are here to cut through the absolute noise of the daily news cycle and, extract the underlying currents connecting today's top stories.
Exactly.
Think of this as your shortcut to being well-informed without that crushing feeling of information overload.
And, the temporal context of this particular stack of briefings is really crucial. I mean, we are heading right into the July 4th holiday week.
Right, the shortened trading week.
Exactly, a shortened trading week for the markets. But there is a much larger historical backdrop here, too, which is that preparations are now actively underway for America's semi-quincentennial.
The 250th anniversary.
Right, the 250th. And when you hit a milestone like that, there is naturally a lot of deep reflection happening across government and industry about, well, where we actually stand on the global stage.
Right.
And more importantly, what is required to maintain that standing for the next century.
Okay, let's unpack this, because looking at the sources today, I was struck by a very specific theme that ties into that exact reflection.
Oh, for sure.
Most days, following the daily news feels like you were staring at this sprawling, chaotic city skyline.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. You are constantly forced to look up at the shiny glass towers of a new technology launch, or, I don't know, the flashing billboards of whatever political drama is happening that hour.
Yeah, the distraction of the day.
Exactly. But today's sources, they are grabbing us by the shoulders and pointing us downward. They want us to look underground at the physical foundations, like the plumbing and power lines.
Yes, the foundational stuff.
Today is entirely about the unseen, heavy, physical infrastructure that is actually running the world right now.
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you synthesize the 4 o'clock biggest story summary for today, the defining narrative entering July 2026 is, quote, infrastructure over hype.
Infrastructure over hype. I like that.
Right. Because for the last 3 or 4 years, the broader market narrative has been utterly dominated by speculation.
Oh, totally.
It was all about geopolitical volatility and the sheer novelty of new digital tools. But what we are seeing across these specific briefings is a massive systemic pivot.
A pivot to what exactly? Real-world stuff.
Yeah, precisely. Investors, governments, and enterprise leaders are looking past the shiny surface. They are demanding measurable reality.
Meaning they want to see the actual math work out.
Exactly. They are focusing intensely on economic fundamentals, supply chains, and power generation.
Okay, but before we get into the technological infrastructure shaping the future, we have to look at the geopolitical baseline, keeping the world running today.
Right. You have to start with a baseline.
And reading through these global briefings, it presents this fascinating, almost jarring paradox. We are looking at a situation of significant diplomatic cooling on one hand, but like physical boiling on the other.
Yeah, it really does feel entirely contradictory.
It does.
It is a striking contrast, but the mechanisms connecting them make perfect sense when you dig in. Let's look at the diplomatic cooling first.
Yeah.
The dominant international story right now is actually stability in the Middle East, which is a major shift from what we were seeing just a year ago.
It's a huge shift, yeah.
Oil prices are relatively stable, and global trade routes are operating with a surprising level of normalcy.
Right. And to understand why, we have to pull a crucial piece of context from the archives. Back at the end of May, we saw a tentative U.S.-Iran peace agreement regarding the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes, that was a massive deal.
And according to today's data, shipping through that specific strait remains stable. But walk me through the mechanics of that. Why does a tentative agreement in one waterway dictate the global baseline?
Because the Strait of Hormuz isn't just a waterway. I mean, it is arguably the single most critical choke point for the global oil trade.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Roughly a fifth of the world's total oil consumption passes through that narrow stretch of water.
A fifth. That's insane.
It really is. And so when shipping is threatened there, insurance premiums for oil tankers skyrocket, supply chains freeze, and global inflation spikes.
Which we've seen happen before.
Right. But when that diplomatic infrastructure holds, energy markets balance out. Predictability returns.
And markets love predictability.
Exactly. Inflation expectations settle down, and major investors can actually breathe and allocate capital toward long-term projects instead of just, hedging against disaster.
I hear that. But here is my pushback, or rather the paradox that just jumps off the page for me.
Let's hear it.
Diplomacy is cooling tensions down in the Middle East, keeping the oil flowing and the markets balanced, but literally, the globe is boiling. Our physical grids are straining.
Oh, absolutely. The strain is real.
The sources note extreme heat waves are currently affecting massive swaths of the U.S., and a severe European heat wave is actively stressing their utility infrastructure.
And it's not just the heat.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Add to that the fact that border and immigration remain these highly prominent resource-draining issues. The briefings highlight federal authorities recently uncovering a 2,000-foot drug tunnel connecting Mexico to the U.S.
Right, an incredible piece of engineering, honestly.
Right. And meanwhile, Ukraine and Russia are still conducting intense long-range military operations, forcing NATO to remain on high alert to monitor European security.
The world is definitely still volatile.
So I have to ask, how do these conflicting realities, right, like a stable oil market, but a physically straining and violently contested planet, how does that actually dictate global strategy?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains exactly why you see the terms supply chain resilience and energy security repeated over and over in these briefings.
Okay, I did notice those buzzwords a lot.
Right. The paradox you just described isn't a contradiction. It is a cause and effect loop. Nations are prioritizing diplomatic stability in places like the Middle East exactly because their domestic physical infrastructures are being tested to their absolute limits at home.
Meaning, you can't afford a global supply chain crisis if your own domestic power grid is actively melting under a heat wave.
Precisely. You hit the nail on the head. When a European power grid is pushed to the brink by extreme heat, or the U.S. is dealing with complex physical border security issues, it exposes structural vulnerabilities.
Yeah, it shows the cracks in the foundation.
Exactly. Take that 2,000-foot drug tunnel you mentioned. That isn't just a border skirmish.
Right.
That is a multi-million-dollar, highly engineered subterranean infrastructure project, complete with ventilation and rail systems.
Wow, a rail system underground.
Yeah, it proves that even illicit markets are moving away from flashy tactics toward heavy, reliable infrastructure.
That's a wild parallel.
It really is. And dealing with all of this requires immense domestic resources. Global powers are realizing they need a stable baseline in global trade.
So they want to quiet down the outside noise.
Exactly. They are aggressively trying to lock down external variables like Middle Eastern oil flows so they can turn their full attention inward. They need to fortify their own physical resilience against climate events and regional security threats.
Okay, that makes total sense. They are plugging the leaks outside the house so they can fight the fire inside the house.
That's a perfect analogy.
And speaking of that fire, the physical strain on the power grid from the extreme heat is actively being supercharged by what is undeniably the biggest technology story of 2026.
Oh, without a doubt, AI.
Right. We are seeing artificial intelligence fundamentally transition from an experimental software toy into a massive, heavily industrialized, wildly power-hungry operational infrastructure.
The paradigm shift here is just profound. The sources explicitly state that enterprise AI is moving from pilot projects into everyday operations.
So it's not just a gimmick anymore.
Not at all. We are no longer talking about a novelty chatbot that writes funny poems or, generates quirky images.
Right, stuff we were all playing with a couple of years ago.
Exactly. We are talking about capital spending being laser-focused on the physical backbone of the internet, AI data centers, vast cloud platforms, and the manufacturing of advanced semiconductors.
And it is wild to see the downstream effects laid out in the briefings. This AI infrastructure boom is literally reshaping national utility planning.
It's forcing their hand, really.
Yeah. These AI data centers require an unbelievable amount of electricity. We are seeing it drive massive grid modernization projects, a boom in utility-scale battery storage, and this is a big one, a massive renewed policy interest in nuclear energy.
The nuclear pivot is huge.
But why nuclear? Why can't we just, build more solar panels to run these server farms?
Well, because AI requires what the industry calls baseload power.
Baseload power, okay.
Right. When you are training a massive foundational model, which is a gigantic neural network processing trillions of data points, it requires a constant, uninterrupted fire hose of computation.
It can't just pause for a second.
No, absolutely not. You cannot run a foundational model on an intermittent energy source that dips when the sun goes behind a cloud or the wind stops blowing.
Ah, I see. Solar and wind are too variable.
Exactly. It needs a massive, steady hum of electricity, 247. So, the utility companies are frantically preparing for sustained summer electricity demand that is compounding the exact extreme heat stress we just talked about.
So what does this all mean? It feels like we've stopped marveling at the very first automobiles, and we're suddenly looking around realizing, oh, wow, if we want to use these things, we actually have to pave millions of miles of roads and build thousands of power plants to run them.
That is exactly what's happening.
But wait, if everyone is pouring billions of dollars into this physical infrastructure, aren't lawsuits a massive speed bump?
Lawsuits are definitely a factor, yeah.
Because I'm looking at the archives story referenced here, where Florida has become the first state to sue OpenAI over ChatGPT safety failures.
Right, the Florida case.
Yeah. If I'm an investor and I see major state governments suing the foundational AI companies, I'm panicking. Doesn't a massive legal threat put this entire infrastructure boom at risk?
It is a totally fair assumption, but what's fascinating here is that the sources actually frame this as a positive evolution.
Really? A positive.
Yeah. The Florida lawsuit, the evolving medical AI regulations we are seeing, the maturing of what the briefings call AI governance platforms, these are not signs of an industry in trouble.
They aren't.
No, they are the hallmark signs of a healthy and maturing industry.
I'm not following. How does getting sued by the state of Florida equate to a healthy industry?
Think about early commercial aviation. When pioneers were just jumping off sand dunes and wooden gliders, nobody needed a Federal Aviation Administration.
Right, because if they crashed, it was just them in the sand.
Exactly. But once you start putting 300 passengers in a metal tube and flying them at 30,000 feet, you absolutely want rigorous, standardized safety checks.
Oh, for sure.
That is exactly where enterprise AI is right now. When a technology leaves the research laboratory and becomes integrated into the everyday operations of global banks, hospital networks, and government agencies, it inevitably invites rigorous regulation.
Because the stakes are so much higher now.
Right. The market doesn't want Wild West disruption anymore. It is demanding operational stability and predictable costs. Investors are heavily rewarding profitable, compliant AI businesses, not just the ones with the flashiest, unregulated demos.
Oh, that makes sense.
So a state suing an AI company over safety failures forces the industry to build better legal and safety protocols. It transitions AI from being just a tech story into an energy story, a legal story, and a corporate governance story.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The regulation proves the plane is actually flying, and now we just need air traffic control.
Perfect way to sum it up.
And this shift toward measurable returns in operational infrastructure isn't just happening in massive faceless server farms or in courtrooms. It is directly altering the way human beings actually do their daily jobs.
It is trickling down to everything.
Yeah, when we look at the science and health briefings, the applications aren't theoretical anymore. They are getting incredibly specific.
Yes, the phrase the sources use repeatedly is AI in the wild. It's accelerating scientific research across the board. The briefings note it is actively shortening portions of drug discovery, which historically is a notoriously long, incredibly expensive process of trial and error.
And just to clarify the mechanism there for you, the listener, we aren't talking about a robot holding a test tube.
No, definitely not.
The sources are talking about utilizing AI to simulate millions of protein interactions in a matter of hours, predicting how a drug will behave before a human ever steps foot in a physical lab.
Which saves years of research.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's also seeing much broader adoption in diagnostics and precision medicine. And I noted that even NASA, while they continue their massive Artemis preparations for returning humans to the moon, is operating in a scientific ecosystem heavily augmented by AI and high-performance computing.
Absolutely. The scientific community is fully on board. But for you, the listener, the most immediate, tangible impact is likely in your own workplace.
Right, the day-to-day office life.
Yeah. The briefings note that AI coding assistants and workflow automation tools have moved from being a neat trick for early adopters to a standard, expected workplace tool.
Like having a calculator or a spell check.
Exactly. Employers are prioritizing practical, measurable AI productivity, and as a result, we are seeing a massive expansion in skills-based hiring. They care less about your pedigree and more about your ability to utilize these new tools.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me, and frankly, a little terrifying.
Uh-oh, what's the fear?
Well, if I am a software developer and I am now heavily relying on an AI coding assistant to write boilerplate code, or if I'm a researcher and AI is shortening my drug discovery timeline, are we looking at a near future where the AI does the actual heavy lifting and the human being is just reduced to an editor?
The replacement fear?
Right, or just a babysitter for a machine.
Mm.
Because that is the existential dread a lot of knowledge workers are feeling right now.
I completely understand why people feel that anxiety. It sounds like corporate speak for, you're getting replaced.
Yeah, it really does.
But the data in these sources suggests a very different reality. The briefings heavily emphasize the shift toward intelligent workflows.
Intelligent workflows.
Right. Automation is absolutely changing office workflows, and hybrid work patterns remain stable. But crucially, the briefings explicitly state a core thesis: human oversight remains essential.
But essential is what? Just a rubber stamp at the end of the line?
No, essential as the ultimate contextual compass. Human oversight isn't a demotion. It is becoming a critical infrastructure component in itself.
Wait, really? A critical infrastructure component?
Yeah, think about it mechanistically. When you are deploying AI in a healthcare setting to diagnose a patient, or using it to manage a fragile global supply chain during a heat wave, the operational reliability of that system requires a human being.
Because the AI doesn't actually understand the real world.
Exactly. The machine can process the data, but the machine does not understand context, it does not understand ethics, and it cannot take legal liability for a catastrophic error.
Liability. The legal story again.
Right. This is why the sources also note that continuous learning becomes increasingly valuable. The market isn't looking for a machine to do your job. It is looking for a human who can safely orchestrate and drive the machine so it doesn't crash the company.
That is a much more empowering perspective. You aren't competing in a foot race against a sports car. You are learning how to drive the sports car.
Exactly.
You are the operational excellence, the liability shield that these companies are prioritizing.
Precisely. And the organizations and the individuals really that figure out how to best integrate that human oversight with the raw efficiency of AI are exactly the ones the markets are rewarding right now.
Well, with all this intense global focus on efficiency, productivity, and massive infrastructure upgrades, we have to talk about what happens when that knowledge worker finally logs off for the day.
Right, downtime.
Because looking at how humanity is actually spending its downtime as we head into this shortened holiday week is fascinating.
And it turns out, even in a highly automated, rapidly shifting world, human leisure remains remarkably consistent in what it fundamentally values.
I love that fact. Despite all this highly technical talk of foundational models, intelligent workflows, and nuclear grid modernization, at the end of the day, half the globe just wants to sit down and watch knockout football.
It's true.
The World Cup knockout stages are completely dominating international sports coverage and culture right now.
It remains the great unifier. And alongside that global shared experience, the summer movie season is drawing massive audiences.
We still love the theaters.
Yeah, live entertainment remains incredibly strong. Even documentary programming is attracting much larger audiences than historically expected.
People still crave narratives. They want shared cultural experiences that makes them feel connected. I also noticed Bitcoin is trading near recent highs, showing this continued fascination with digital assets and decentralized finance.
Yep, the crypto market is still very active.
But even in our leisure time, the technology is inescapable, right? The streaming competition is intense. The creator economy is rapidly expanding, which we obviously love to see. As the sources note, podcast audiences just continue growing.
Which is great news for us.
Absolutely. And the music and creative industries are actively having to adapt their business models to AI generation tools.
This raises an important question, though. We talk extensively about the infrastructure of our workplaces transforming, but the infrastructure of our leisure time is undergoing the exact same digital transformation.
So it's not just the spreadsheets getting AI upgrades.
Not at all. Traditional media, legacy publishers, and even physical museums are aggressively expanding their digital and online experiences.
Right.
And the video game publishers producing the titles people play on the weekends, They are utilizing the exact same AI engines and cloud platforms we just talked about in the enterprise sector.
So the lines between human creation, machine automation, and consumer consumption are all completely blurring together.
They are merging completely.
The unseen architecture of our entertainment is being completely rebuilt right alongside the physical architecture of our power grids.
Exactly. Whether you are watching a massive summer blockbuster that utilized AI-generated visual effects to cut production costs, or you are listening to a podcast that is being distributed and recommended to you through an AI-optimized cloud platform, the unseen infrastructure is there, quietly running in the background, shaping the experience.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. If we had to synthesize the defining theme of late June 2026 for you, the listener, it is a massive global reality check.
A huge reality check.
We are actively moving away from the breathless hype of new technologies and the daily panic of geopolitical flare-ups, and we are focusing intently on the concrete physical infrastructure needed to actually sustain the future.
It is entirely about building stable foundations.
Yeah.
We see it in the diplomatic treaters keeping the Middle East shipping lanes open so global trade can function.
Right.
We see it in the immense capital being poured into national power grids to keep AI data centers running without blacking out cities.
Those nuclear power pivots.
Exactly. And we see it in the workplace, where human beings are actively learning to co-work with algorithms, establishing continuous learning and contextual oversight as the new baseline for career stability.
It is a phenomenal shift in perspective. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive and for taking the time to look past the chaotic skyline to examine the foundations with us today. It truly is the best way to get thoroughly informed without the overload.
And before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Ooh, all right, what is it?
Well, we discussed how AI data centers are driving massive electricity demand, right? Forcing a total rethink of utility planning and sparking renewed interest in nuclear power.
Right.
But if the computational demands of artificial intelligence continue to rise exponentially as these foundational models get smarter and more complex, will the future of AI ultimately be capped not by the limits of software innovation or by human creativity, but by our planet's sheer physical capacity to generate power?
Oh, wow.
Will the next great leap in artificial intelligence actually have to be a massive breakthrough in energy generation first?
It really makes you wonder.
Yeah.
We spend so much time looking up at the cloud, but the future might entirely depend on the power lines buried beneath our feet. Thanks for listening.